Hi guys, so this is my first video on my channel, Kip Sensei. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy it, of course, subscribe and all that, that whole thing that YouTubers always say at the beginning of their videos. So, if you maybe couldn't tell from the, the profile picture, I am an anarcho-capitalist, and a lot of people are probably wondering what that means or what my basis is for that and all that kind of stuff, because I think a lot of people who are maybe minarchists or even conservatives could possibly make the jump to full anarcho-capitalism, kind of full libertarianism. And I think a lot of times people are wary because they view it as radical or extreme, and they don't really quite get the answers that they really need to get on YouTube. So that's what this video is going to be about. This video is going to be about kind of addressing some of the common concerns. I think there's enough videos already about what actually ANCAPism is, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's tons of videos about that on YouTube, so I don't think I need to necessarily add to that. I think this is just going to be a little bit more modified version of that, and it's just going to be addressing what ANCAPism, why it's not as extreme as you may originally think. So just to get started right off the bat, just to kind of inform you guys as to my political journey. I'm not trying to sit here and just talk about myself all day, because that'd be boring. But I just want to give you guys an idea for some of you who may be discovering or experiencing new political ideologies. During my early childhood, I was more or less raised as just kind of a standard Fox News watching conservative. If that makes sense. Some of you may be able to sympathize with that, maybe not, but I was just kind of a standard Fox News watching conservative who thought he believed in small government, but really, of course, it's big government, which we'll get to in a bit, but, pro-foreign intervention, anti-drug, all that kind of stuff, right? I was just your standard Fox News watching conservative when I was a young kid, and I was still very interested in politics, even when I was a small child. Eventually, however, one thing that really impacted my life and my personal experience and development, I guess, is that throughout my life, I was a very strong believer in Christianity, and eventually I discovered that I was really more agnostic. I don't know if I'd say full atheist, but I discovered agnosticism. And I discovered this maybe at about age 13, 14. Actually, probably closer to 12. But I discovered after a few years that I really wasn't, my belief in religion was not quite as strong as I thought. And so once I questioned my religious belief, I began to question my political beliefs. And I started watching, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this phase, for those of you who are libertarians will probably laugh, fellow libertarians will probably laugh, but I started watching Kyle Kalinske on Secular Talk. I started watching the Young Turks. And I was like a closet progressive. And all this was, of course, very closet, all this stuff. I was like a closet progressive for a couple of years. I was a closet progressive, and I believed in huge welfare spending, Bernie Sanders, kind of universal Medicare. I was all over that for a couple of years. Then eventually I started watching more kind of minarchist libertarians kind of debunk that stuff, and I liked the libertarians because they were anti-interventionist, which I eventually became really big anti-interventionist and still am. So I don't really regret my progressive phase. It was just a weird phase, but I liked libertarians on some things, but there are things about the market and the free market I was more averse to. So I started watching videos, and I kind of came myself being convinced, and eventually I became a minarchist. And then after becoming a minarchist, I made the full jump to ANCAPism, and then eventually I'm recording this video for you guys now. So just for you guys who may be wondering what this is all about, I wanted to make this video so that you might be able to understand how someone who has gone through all these phases, basically been all over the spectrum, how I eventually landed at anarcho-capitalism. So before we get to any practical arguments, we need to really understand the philosophical basis for anarcho-capitalism. Now, it's founded upon the non-aggression principle, otherwise also known as the NAP. You can find a ton of videos on this. The non-aggression principle merely states that the initiation of force is not justified, and someone who is having force initiated against them has the right to defend themselves. Okay? That's the non-aggression principle. That is the foundation of anarcho-capitalism. And that's why sometimes you'll hear the word voluntarism, because anarcho-capitalism is this ideal of a system that is entirely voluntary. There is no coercive force. Now, the government, if you look at the definition of a government, what it really is, a government is a group of individuals, a set of individuals that have the right to use force against others. The supposed right, I'm using air quotes, but you can't see that, have the supposed right to administer force against others for their own purposes, to achieve their own goals. Force can include imprisonment, it can include death, killing people, it can include taxing people, but the government is initiating force. So someone who is a statist who believes in government, let's just take a minarchist, for instance, which, if for those of you who don't know, a minarchist is someone who is basically libertarian, except they want a state that still does like military and cops and stuff like that. Just the basic functions. So someone who's a minarchist, like I used to be, you think, well, I believe in the non-aggression principle for everyone except a select group of individuals who call themselves government. They're allowed to violate the non-aggression principle in order to maintain, quote-unquote, societal order or something, to some kind of BS phrase like that doesn't really mean anything. But, you know, the government is allowed to violate the non-aggression principle, and all of us mere peasants must adhere to it. That would be the position of a minarchist. So I kind of want to address the fault in that. The government is no more than a group of people. That's all it is. All the government is a group of people, nothing more, nothing less. Just because someone is elected into an office doesn't suddenly give them mystical powers by which they can interpret the world, right? So, sorry, I'm a little bit not fluid. It's kind of feels awkward talking into camera. So, I want to pose this to you. Someone may, let's take taxes for example. Taxes are an extraction of money at gunpoint. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, why would that be at gunpoint? Well, because what if you don't pay your taxes? First, you're going to get a notice that you need to pay your taxes. Then, eventually, federal agents are going to show up to imprison you. If you resist being thrown in a cage because you don't want to hand over your money to the government that is forcing you to hand over your money, they do reserve the right to kill you. And the government can use your money for whatever it is that they want to use your money for. Sorry, I got a phone call that came in. But yeah, the government can use your money for whatever it is they want to use your money for. Even if you say there's a draft going on, even if you are a conscientious objector to a war, you still have to fund that war with your tax money that's being taken from you at gunpoint by a group of people called the government. And so some people may say, well, but we need the government to protect us, like with the police, from, robbery or theft, or murder. And that's a really ironic one, because they're basically saying, well, we need a group of thieves and murderers to protect us from thieves and murderers, which is completely ridiculous. The government, more or less, if you're talking about protection, basically acts like the mafia did back in the day, where they say, hey, look, we're coming here with our boys, and we're going to take money from you, and as long as you pay us a little cut in exchange, we'll protect you, we'll take care of you, right? So we'll protect you from the other mob groups. And so that's what would happen. These little store owners would pay the mob because the mob would quote-unquote protect them. But really, of course, the mob, the mafia was the predator. The government basically works in the same way. Hey, look, you pay us, we'll take care of you. But they're doing it by force at gunpoint. So, when people ask, well, why, people have so many objections to something like private security or private police. But really, having The key fundamental difference is that having choice in who you have to protect you, you have the ability to change to somebody else. There's competition, which means that if the people you're paying to protect you try to take advantage of you, you can take your money elsewhere. That freedom does not exist within the government. Within the government, you have to pay the government. You don't have a choice. They're going to, quote-unquote, protect you, whether you like it or not. And the best part of it all is that we have a certain political party of ours that wants to strip away your right to defend yourself and say that the government will take care of you. So it would be like, imagine this. Imagine a primitive tribal society. And there's a man who's living in a hut, and he has a wooden club. And so let's say a group of 4 or 5 other guys, they go to his hut, and they bust down the door, and they say, hey, look, we see that you need someone to protect you. So listen here, you're not going to need that wooden club anymore. We're going to take it from you, and by the way, if you resist, we'll beat you over the head with our clubs. But we're going to take that club from you, and don't worry about it, we'll protect you. You probably wouldn't like that if you were in the position of this guy in the hut. That's basically what the government does. The government says, hey, look, we'll protect you. And in all reality, if you actually look at it, there are real private security forces, not just mall cops. I'm talking about real private security forces. Mr. Dapperton has some videos about that and stuff, but the response time that you get with private security forces is so much greater because they have a profit incentive to protect you, and there's competition, which means that if you don't like their services, you can change to somebody else. The government has no incentive to improve because you're stuck with them. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked from the philosophy. I'm getting onto the practical stuff. I'm sorry. But philosophically, having a group of individuals that can violate the non-aggression principle that everyone else has to abide by is not logically consistent. And that is the philosophical basis of anarcho-capitalism. If everybody else has to abide by the non-aggression principle, then why should there be a government that is exempt from abiding by this principle? That is the philosophical basis. Now, a lot of you might be saying, who are minarchists in particular, you might be thinking, well, I can get there philosophically, but how do we get there practically? I kind of already did that because I got sidetracked. But if you really want to know how we get there practically, I'm going to keep doing some more videos. And there's other videos you can go to too, and books you can read and all kinds of stuff. But from a philosophical standpoint, what I really want you to come away from this is that if we say that the initiation of force is wrong, for example, I think we'd all condemn murder or theft, then why do we give a group of individuals who call themselves government the right to do it? And that's the question that I really kind of want you guys to think about after this video. But anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry if it was a bit of a tangent. And I look forward to the comments and what you guys have to say. And if you enjoyed it, subscribe and like and enjoy more videos. And if you didn't enjoy it, then don't watch more. But anyways, it was great talking to you guys, and have a good one.